I've always said that in the talent acquisition industry, not a lot of intellectuals have stayed in the space for very long. So when I meet somebody that is as intellectual and analytically focused about talent acquisition as I am, like Gimbala Sankare, I'm always drawn to them. Gimbala has had an incredible career working at companies like WEX, leading talent acquisition at the NBA, and most recently as the head of HR at Flaherty in Maine. Gimbala and I dive into a ton of topics, including the talent acquisition industry as it stands right now and where it's going, his time at the NBA, and his support of his home country of Ghana. Not to mention why Maine is a great place to visit and live. I really enjoyed this conversation. Hell, I enjoy every conversation I have with Gimbala, and this was no different. I'm so excited for you to listen to this episode and let us know what you think about all of his insights. He's a great guy, and there's a lot to learn. Enjoy. Welcome to another episode of Higher Learning. I am here today with a good friend of mine, Gimbala Sankare. Currently, he's the head of HR at Flaherty and formerly the head of talent acquisition at WEX and the NBA. Gimbala, how you doing?
Doing well, It's nice to see you again. It's been a while.
It has. I always enjoy our conversations offline, online, wherever they are. This is actually, in fact, the second episode of Higher Learning that we're recording. First one was unable to be released for reasons that we won't get into. If anybody wants to hit up the secret archives of Higher Learning, just shoot me a note. We'll see what we can do. But I'm so excited to have you here because listen, you love talent acquisition and you look at it from an intellectual perspective. I like to think that I do the same. And so we share a lot of like common thought there. And so I'm really excited to dive into that a little bit and share with our listeners some of your great insights and learnings. So let's start here. Okay. It's kind of a crazy time for the recruiting market right now, right? We had the great resignation a few years ago, and we had recruiters getting salaries and jobs unlike we'd ever seen before. It was the highest of the highs from what I've ever seen in my career, at least. And then we started to see that over the next couple years, the market started to turn a little bit. And unfortunately, there was a lot of layoffs and rifts in the space. And we've seen people who have been displaced from roles. And now we're starting to see things, I don't know, heat back up. So I'm just interested, what are you seeing in the market? What do you think are some of the headwinds going on right now? And where do you think things are going forward overall?
Well, no, I'm glad you touched that, and you touched up on that, and I think I've spent the last 5 6 months talking to a lot of my colleagues and folks in the industry, what their experience has been, and I can honestly say, if you're someone that's sitting there thinking, how is the market doing? What is the market doing? I can tell you the market is changing, right, for the better. It's definitely going to be different in Q4 than it was, in Q1 or ending Q1 or early Q2. But it was definitely challenging. It was definitely a struggle if you were in the talent space, if you were in the HR space. I mean, I've had folks, and I've had, I mean, senior leaders, in HR and in the talent space tell me, you know what, they are going back to school to study a new industry, right? Because they've had it, like it has been that big of a change. And for me, look, I've always believed that layoffs, and especially what happened early this spring, it's really a reflection of management more than that individual that is getting that severance conversation or layoff conversation and so on, right? So I've spent a lot of time talking to folks that have been in those situations, just letting them know and just kind of giving them an opportunity to decompress about how they're feeling, and then letting them know that, look, it's not you at all. It's really a reflection of the management of the company that you're in. But it was definitely a slug. It's definitely a struggle. It pains for me to see and hear some of the awful experiences. It seems like layoffs started happening, and then organizations lost their sense of humanity in some ways, in terms of how they're treating applicants and candidates in general, the experience, and a lot of the conversations that we've had online and offline about just the hiring experience in general. It seems like companies just, like, everything just went out the gate. I've had experiences where folks were sharing with me that they will go through interview process. They'll go through 12, 13 rounds of interviews. and then ultimately being told that, oh, actually, we need this position to be on site, or the position needs to be on hold, and so on. Well, you will have, recruiting teams reach out to candidates wanting to schedule interviews, but then ghost them, right? And not show up, right? All of these things are just like completely day and night from, where we were in 2021, 2020, and so on. But I still believe that, it will get back to those rates again. I still think that there's a definite need in the industry, in any industry, when it comes to really good, highly capable, highly intelligent, and talent acquisition specialists and leaders and so on, and HR leadership and HR managers and so on. So I do think that you will see that change happen, end of Q4. Early Q1 next year, getting back to maybe not the astronomical numbers that we saw in 2021, but getting really close to that.
I love that. I'll give a little bit of my personal insight. I concur with a lot of the things you talked about. And quite frankly, to see the lack of humanity in some of the experiences and how things fall apart the way they do. What's interesting about our industry in particular is that we're a bellwether a lot of time for the economy or the market and where things are going. We tend to see it up front because we're actually seeing the business decisions being made until it becomes news a month, 2 months down the road. And so what I've seen in 2023, and I've said this a couple times, it's been an absolute fist fight, right? For a lot of industries, but particularly for our business. We've been lucky in that we're diversified and that we have offshore, nearshore consulting. We have different things that we do that when things get a little more uncertain, people turn to in terms of those types of services. But I think one of the things that really has been most interesting to me, and not in a great way, is that a lot of times we think about, is there a lot of hiring happening or not a lot of hiring not happening? The economy's bad, it's good. What's going on? What's the unemployment rate? What's interesting to me is that deals fall apart, right? All across the board with the slightest little breeze of wind in a bad economy. It seems like people are, unwilling, or the slightest thing can happen that will throw things off course. And it's much like you're talking about going through 12 interviews and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're changing the requirements, or this isn't exactly perfect. And so we're going to move away from it. When you're in a robust economy and money is flowing and deals are happening across all different lines of industry, it seems like, like a skyscraper in the wind. Like it's very hard to knock off its course.
Yeah, it seemed like, companies are looking for any possible way to say no to somebody, right? And they will take them along the journey and then find something at the end and like, no, we're not interested in it. But the reality is, look, you know, this is a reflection of the culture of the organization, right? And at some point, it's going to come back and bite them and bite them, where the sun does shine, right? Like
Sure.
it's going to come back. It's going to come back, and it's a reflection of the culture and the reputation of the organization. And if you need talent, if you need a talent during the summer or early spring, and you treated them as such, and didn't end up completing the hiring, I'm telling you, you haven't closed that gap. You're gonna come back into the marketplace again. You're gonna come seeking for that talent again. And those experiences, and I'll tell you right now, candidates talk to each other.
Well, let me interject real quickly because this is something I believe passionately. Especially if you're a big company, one of the most underrated forms of marketing is the people who apply to your company, the experience they have in the interview process, if they hear back, get feedback or not. And here's what I mean by that, right? If you're a big company, many times you have 10,000 plus applicants, right, for all of the different roles in your organization. And how they feel as they go through that experience, whether they apply and don't hear anything, or they go all the way through 12 interviews and things fall apart, that person is A, unlikely to recommend that place to work to a friend. B, maybe another opportunity comes up that's a better fit and they're like, no thanks. Or C, they actually might not want to be a customer of your services and products. And because it's happening at such scale, that can be super detrimental. Word of mouth, grassroots marketing is still something that's very real. And so I find that not only is it the right thing to do from a moral and ethical perspective in terms of how you manage candidates in general, I think it's a great, important business bottom line objective to do right by them. So I didn't mean to interject, but I think that companies fail to recognize that.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And look, I've served in positions where, you build talent acquisition strategies knowing that your talent marketing and engagement and branding experience that you want to provide for candidates and so on, will drive the value for the organization, right? You can actually measure some of these things to the sense in how it drives revenue in the organization, right? So, if you think about some of these areas, if you do sports and entertainment and, retail and so on, these are folks, the candidates that are going through the hiring process are also, the customers that are consuming the product that you're providing. So if you're not treating them right in that process, guess what? It's going to have a bottom line effect in the organization. And I think many organizations fail to realize that and connect the dots. And that's why you need really good, talent acquisition strategies, because the right strategy allows you to be able to kind of pinpoint specifically. And there's data around all of these things, right? There's platforms that will allow you to enrich some of this data to see specifically how I am treating that the NPS score of each candidate, as they come through my process, is impacting, the value and the revenues of the organization going forward.
Yeah, I think there's a false narrative that if somebody doesn't get the job, they're going to be unhappy anyway. So what does it matter? That's so not true. You don't have to go through the entire process, get an offer, and accept an offer to think it was a good process or walk away feeling good about the company and the people you met. Quite the contrary. So I've had numerous situations for our own company where somebody hasn't gotten the job initially for whatever reason, either on their decision or our decision, and ultimately came back and been some of our most prosperous employees. And so this long-term mindset, this long-term greedy mindset that we have at our company, especially when it comes to hiring, is something that's really paid off for us. And I would say that every company should be looking at that. Now, I want to ask you something because you have a lot of really great ideas around being creative and innovative in the recruitment and talent acquisition space. Let's say that you were talking to a founder that was getting ready to start their own TA function within an organization. What do you think are some of the core fundamentals or core principles of a great TA organization? Where would you tell them to start and where would you tell them to focus?
Well, pay for the best TA talent, right? And pay them competitively to, in the marketplace. Make sure that you have folks within the TA team that are analytical, that understand the business strategy, right? Understand, this talent is going to drive this particular, vertical for the business, and this is how the impact is going to be in the business, right? And then make sure that your team understands, the type of talent that you want into the organization that you're creating in an organization. Those three things would allow you to have, I would say, best in class, talent acquisition function. Now, ultimately, the culture of the organization, is at the end of the day, the decision that helps a lot of people come into that organization. So you want to have that conversation and ask yourself as a founder, like, what culture do I want to set up for this organization that I'm creating, and then have that permeate across the talent acquisition team and the talent team in general, and you see the results of that in the type of people that you bring in. But those three things, making sure that you have an analytical function, making sure that you're paying the right talent to attract the right talent, right? There's always, well, let's just bring in, young recruiters or folks in and see if we can convert them into recruiters and so on, and let's pay them below marketplace. And I'll tell you right now, if you're not paying your recruiters, they're not getting you the top talent. I guarantee you that. If you're not invested in the development of your recruiters and talent acquisition team, guess what? They're not seeing the right talent. They're not able to interpret the skills that you're looking for in the organization into the marketplace to attract the right talent for you. If you don't have the right culture, then they can't speak to that when they go out into the marketplace to attract the right talent for you. So all of those things are combined in creating a successful talent function, as you grow as a founder.
Yeah, I love that. That's such great advice. Let's dive in a little bit deeper there. Let's talk about the analytics aspect, okay? What do you think are the key measurements around seeing the effectiveness of your talent acquisition process, your talent acquisition organization? What are you, if I'm handing you a report, what are the first things that your eyes are going to, or what are the things that you're thinking that need to be captured to best understand how effective you are in terms of talent acquisition within a company?
Well, I mean, it's one of these things where, first of all, you have to have the right people that in the team that think about some of these things as well, right? Because when I look at the dashboards that I've created, the metrics, and how I measure performance and success with recruiters, it really comes down to how much bandwidth they have to be able to execute on some of these experiences, right? So what is that? What is the level number of recs, and to their performance, and how quickly are they moving through the process and spending time engaging with candidates and sourcing with candidates and coming through. But TA has hundreds, if not thousands, of metrics that you can look at to measure effectiveness. But the recruiter effectiveness score for me is pretty simple, right? You look at how long candidates are sitting with each requisitions, and how long it takes for recruiters to move them through that process. And then all of that, kind of comes together in that NPS score that you get at the end of the hiring process, where candidates are, sharing, their feedback around what the candidate experience looks like, the hiring experience looks like for them. And then all of that comes in full scope of understanding, okay, what does effectiveness look like in my team? But you want to measure the bandwidth of your team. You want to measure, how long is it taking for each recruiter to do the most minimal task, that it comes to, right? Like opening up a resume and skimming through the resume, right? Can you provide them with automation and software that makes those things easier for them? I'd rather see my recruiters spending time with candidates and talking to them, understanding, what they're looking for, and, sharing our culture of where we are as an organization and why they will be, additive, why they will be successful in being additive to the culture of the organization, than sitting there and trying to kind of do Boolean searches in my ATS or anything like that. There are systems that do that for them, right? You want to make sure the recruiters are moving candidates and providing an optimal experience through the hiring process. I've always said,
I love that. So
any candidate that is spending more than 2 weeks in each stage, you're wasting your time.
Time is money, and you're going to lose top talent if you have too drawn out of a process. And if you have a lot of redundancies and overlap or long feedback cycles, good luck getting the best talent. Certainly, your competition is going to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and I'll still tell you, I'll actually say, even in this market, how crazy this market has been, you still have the best talent are not going to be available more than 3 weeks in the marketplace.
Yeah, I'm gonna tell you something right now. Two things that I've seen over the last 4 weeks. I agree with you. The market, full time hiring in particular, is turning. We're seeing a lot more going on from our different clients. We're either coming back to life or new clients. All different types of things happening there. So I think that's very positive. And I'll also say for our company and the hiring that we're trying to do, I've never seen such great talent available right now, right? And they're excited to work at a company like ours, and it's awesome because our brand has grown, so that's great. But it's also about who's available right now, and so there's always cycles to these things. Great people are always going to have great opportunities and great work. So if you're sitting there and you're waiting and you're listening to this and hopeful, time is coming. It's coming soon. Gimbala and I know we're at the forefront of it. So I want to ask you this: we met when you were working at the NBA. And I'm a big NBA fan. Everybody, I got some basketball shoes right behind me right here. I want to ask you, I heard you on a panel once talk about how, the way that the league presents itself externally in terms of bringing in personnel and all the different things they do from a talent perspective on the court, right? It's a little bit different than what's happening on the back end in terms of hiring on the corporate side. What did you try to bring to the NBA? Where were you coming in to try to stand things up and get that to be more reflective of what we see externally from a talent acquisition perspective?
Yeah, I mean, my time at the NBA was really looking at the function and optimizing the function to, to be able to, if I'm a candidate looking at the NBA, I'm a fan, so I'm looking at this amazing brand, and I wanted to come in and experience that same brand coming as a candidate through the process. So my biggest remit was really kind of how do I merge those two experiences together to make sure that they mirror each other, right? What you see externally is also the same experience that you bring in, but then also bringing in platforms that are best in class to allow for better hiring process, launching new marketing campaign, the Bring Your Game campaign, that you see on the NBA, on the LinkedIn and so on, right? those were some things that came through my time there, where we initiated that, and then activating some of these social media platforms, especially LinkedIn, right, where LinkedIn is a great source to be able to talk about the brand, but in a very professional way, but also showing the life of the MBA and showing what is going on, for employees and trying to have a career at the MBA. So those things were key to bring in, and then the MBA was going through kind of evolution and growing, direct to consumer strategy, launching the MBA, the League app. All of those things required a different way of thinking in terms of how we talked about talent, how we talk about, what is the MBA, right? So the MBA is not just a basketball organization. It's a digital, technology company, is a digital marketing company, is all of these different things that you never really associate with the league. Or a part of it is also a startup organization, right? In a way, right? So it's changing the mindset of what the league is and how the league operates. And I remember, the team going to some of these conferences and career fairs, and to see the MBA there, right? It changed the narrative. Oh, actually, wait, the league recruits tech talent? Yeah, absolutely, because we're building, newer platforms and so on. So there's a lot that was going on at the league, and and there's still a lot going on there, from a talent perspective, but also just how the business is growing in general. And I think, it's one of these things where if you are coming into the sports and entertainment market and want to have a career in sports and entertainment, the NBA is definitely a place that you want to look at, because I think you can see, the transformation both from a technology perspective and culturally, where the NBA kind of sits within the social narrative and the social zeitgeist of in this country, right? You want to be part of that, So I would definitely, if I'm coming out of school today and I'm looking for an opportunity to go into sports and entertainment, that is the place to be.
Where do I get an application? So are we going to Suns Knicks finals in July? Is that happening? I'm gonna hold up my end of the bargain, man. You got to get your team going.
Look, I'm still holding hope for my Knicks, man. I mean, last year, we were there in the postseason, right? So I'm hoping that this year,
Incremental improvement. Keep going. You keep moving up that chain. You'll get there.
so I live in Maine, and everybody around me is Celtics fans, so it's always very interesting conversations during the postseason.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually in Boston pretty recently, and they had a bunch of Celtics billboards up, and yeah, they love their Celtics. There's no question about that. I'm very excited about this season. I want to ask you a little bit of a different question. Is if I ask you for the moment or initiative or something you did in your career that you're most proud of, right? At any organization you've been in, what comes to mind when I ask you that?
Um, I mean, I tend, every time I've had that question, I tend to focus more around, the people that I've developed, right? I've had some really great people on my team. Some folks that never believed that they were or they could have ever been in TA or be successful in TA. But being able to show them the path and help guide them and develop them and train them, to be, some of the best recruiters, some of the best leaders and talent. That to me has been, very proud. I know it's almost like a cliche, but no, it's actually for me that is important. I mean, I can go back and look at every single team that I've had. There are one or two people in there that never thought, of a career in talent acquisition, right? But then being able to bring them in and give them, empower them, right, to be able to kind of create these strategies and implement and drive it, right, and see the results from it, right? Those things are powerful, and it gives me, I get goosebumps right now even talking about that. But yeah, I mean, those things are powerful, right? The best thing that you can do in this position, or in the positions that I've been as a leader, is really empowering your team and developing them to be able to achieve whatever they put their mind to it, and for the team and for the function for the organization.
It's not cliche. It's what all great leaders would say. I knew you were going to go there. I know you that well. So I'm glad you said that. And I've met some of the people that you've had the opportunity to develop, and I know they're better off because of it. So that's absolutely a great answer. All right, I'm going to take this a little bit of a different direction again. So you said you live in Maine, never been to Maine, never traveled there, never lived there. Don't know much about it. I've never been. I've been to like 40 to 50 states. I have not gotten to Maine, so I need to hear right now. Why should I go to Maine? What's the great thing about Maine?
Listen, if you love Four Seasons, if you want to experience the full Four Seasons that everyone wants, right? Maine has it, right? If you like recreational, Maine has it. If you like seafood, you got it, right? If you like to go hang out camping and be in farming and all of that, or be a hunter, Maine got it all. It's a pretty big state. One of the things that I love about Maine is, within 5 hours, I can go to, I'm in Europe, I'm in Canada, I'm in Boston, I'm in New York, right? All happening within a 5 hour window. But it's a great state. The people are amazing in Maine. There are more trees in Maine than there are people. So, so you get fresh air here, almost on a daily basis, right? If we weren't dealing with the Canadian fires. But Maine, man, you gotta enjoy, you gotta come.
All right. Listen, you had me. I like lobster rolls. A nice 5 hour jaunt to Europe is not bad. Okay, you're right. There's a lot going on there. Listen, and I'm gonna turn off a lot of people right now, but I'm gonna tell you where I come from, and then I'm gonna tell you why the Four Seasons thing. Everybody brings that up, and I'm just gonna push back a little bit. Okay, grew up in Southern California, then moved to Arizona, and I've lived in Florida. So granted, I'm not your Four Seasons guy. I like the warm weather. I've been in the Sun Belt. But what's with the Four Seasons, right? If I want to go experience the winter, I'll get a JetBlue flight.
I'm telling you,
I'll head over there.
if if you are in Maine in the fall and see the trees turn and change color, I'm telling you right now, it's stuff of Hallmark movies, man. It
What's
is the
that do
best.
for me? Would I feel more
Dude, I
fulfilled?
mean,
Like I don't get
there's
it.
a little, it turns like your heart, like, oh, this is beautiful. Go apple picking with the kids and so on, man. It's beautiful, man. You
All
gotta
right.
come.
Here's what I'm doing. I'm gonna set up a trip. You and I are going apple picking, and I'm gonna see if my heart feels full and fulfilled after I do that. Okay?
Yeah. And then in the
Um,
summer, you can come by and we can go on the water and go blueberry picking in Maine and all of that good stuff.
I mean, two of the four things that you're selling me on Maine is fruit picking, man. That's what you guys got going up there. All right, listen, I'm not gonna hate. We have a really large Maine listenership, so I want to make sure I don't offend anybody. But okay, I'm open minded. I'm gonna see what it's about. Okay.
It's a great state. Look, I left New York. I still come down to New York, a couple of times, but I grew up in the Bronx, and the hustle and bustle of New York is it's in my DNA. But I'm telling you, man, you come up here, life is slow, and my mother, my mother is your traditional African mother, man, and she comes up here, it's just like there's so many trees you can hide a body. I was like, wait, mom, what are you talking about? But that's her way of showing how much she loves it. And she always, whenever she has an opportunity to, she's coming into Maine and to come visit, right? Because you got to get away from New York every now and then.
Yeah, listen, the Bronx, it's definitely, you don't know where to hide those bodies, right? So if you need a good forest up in Maine, that's where you go.
Yeah, it's a very old African mother joke.
No, I'm with you. I totally get it. I get it. So listen, I'm gonna look into it and then maybe I'll get some tickets. I don't even know if I can get a direct flight to Maine, but I'll figure it out. I'm gonna come
You
visit
can
you.
get a direct flight to Maine. There's direct flights
All
from
right. You know what?
Bullet, Maine.
I'm being a hater. I'm being a hater. I'm gonna cut it out now before I piss anybody off. All right, man. So listen, you know what the show's about. We love talking about hiring. You are an expert in the space. You've done it for tons of companies. You've hired for your team. So we're gonna dive into that a little bit. I want to learn a little bit about what's important to you. I think what I want to do is I want to ask about you building your own team, though. I really want to focus this where, listen, this is a talent acquisition show. You're in the space, I'm in the space. Let's talk about it from a talent acquisition perspective. So, if I had to ask you to tell me your overall hiring philosophy when you're bringing recruiters onto your team, I want to know what skills and behaviors you're focusing on to bring in top talent to your team for that role particularly.
I'm generally looking for recruiters that are analytical. I'm looking at recruiters that are are comfortable with complexities of building and developing, right? Because in TA there's always some sort of building and developing happening, whether it is with candidates or with hiring managers. So recruiters are able to kind of speak to that and kind of guide and walk people through best in class experiences and so on. And I want recruiters to also bring their kind of innate personalities and authenticity and their life experiences, to the positions, right? Because those are the things that can drive a recruiter to be successful, right? Based on some of those lived experiences they've had can serve as a fire in them to drive them. I look for recruiters that are continuously looking to learn, but at the same time, are ready to have fun when needed, right? My philosophy is, pay them right, pay the best talent and get them out of the market pretty quickly, right? So when I go into market looking for folks in my team, I'm looking for all of those things. And then I'm also saying, hey, look, I'm going to pay you right. I'm going to make sure that you're competitive. I'm going to make sure I provide you with the development that you need. And then you come in. Every team that I've been in, there's been some sort of development. There's been some sort of transformation. I've yet to see, and I've talked to, and I've been to a lot of different organizations. There's no talent acquisition team that is 100%. There's always something to be done or something to do. So you always want to stack your team with folks that are comfortable with those things, right? If I have a recruiter that's telling me, I can only work with this one particular ATS, I want to explore whether or not they can learn something new or they can learn a new ATS. And if that's not the case, and if they're not comfortable with that, then that may be a very difficult, transition for someone to be on the team. So you always want to look for folks that have the dexterity to be able to learn some of these new technologies, new philosophies of engagement with candidates and hiring managers and so on.
I love that. All right, so let's talk about if I ask you for a memorable interview experience. You don't got to name names. Maybe it was you interviewing, maybe it was you interviewing somebody else. What comes to mind when I ask you that?
Um, yeah, I'm trying to see here. I've had some really doozy, some some interesting ones. Um, I guess on the good side, I think some of the best interview experiences that I've had is really, you go through an interview, you go through the conversation, you learn from each other, from the interviewer or the hiring manager, and you continue the discussion even beyond that interview experience. And some of these folks, I've interviewed with some folks that we didn't end up making a deal and coming to the organization, but end up being mentors and friends that we continue to talk to today. I've been in interviews, the other interviews the other way, where and I spent some time, I've led D&I in global organizations, so it's always interesting when I'm in interviews, and then you have folks that will say things that are not necessarily the most appropriate, right? And then you're having to right there and then in that interview, correct them. And then you have this awkward silence and awkward next steps. But you have those as well. But to me, an interview should be a conversation piece, right, between two people and trying to understand, why each of us will be a good fit for the organization and what about the organization that I need to know. That interviews shouldn't be a test, shouldn't be a quest that you have to go through to try to seek answers or anything like that. It really should be a conversation between two people. So I've always frowned upon the idea, well, let's make them uncomfortable. No, what are you making people uncomfortable for? We're two people having a conversation. I need to know what I don't know about your organization so that when if this decision is there for me to make, I can fully be confident in knowing that I can come to your organization and be successful. And you need to know why I'm interested in the skills that I bring into the table, and have a conversation about that. It shouldn't be, a mystery. It shouldn't be an odyssey to try to get people to get you answers or ask questions, through an interview process.
I totally agree. It's fantastic advice. I hope there's a lot of hiring leaders listening. I want to ask you, what about like lunch interviews, dinner interviews, interviews with spouses? Have you seen this? Do you think those are effective? Do you think those are good ways to kind of get to the bottom of people?
Yeah, I mean they're effective, but it could go sideways really, really quick, right? I had one leader tell a story. I mean, I'm sitting there. He said, yeah, we took the candidate out, took him out to dinner, and told them that they can drink whatever they want. And then, we were drinking, we made a deal with the waiter, we were drinking water and looked like vodka. So the candidate just kept getting vodka, trying to, be like us, and got completely wasted. It's like, how is that? How is that a
What are
good
you trying to
experience?
prove? They're
What are you trying
alcohol
to do,
tolerance?
right?
What
To
the
get it
hell?
right. You get what I'm saying? Right. It's like, yeah. So I mean, you should see me. Like I was like, what the hell is this? Right. Not so it could go. I mean, I would never recommend, getting to that level unless you, as a leader, you're fully confident that, the individual representing the organization can really close the deal without making a mess, right? We shouldn't be putting people in a position where we're testing whether or not that they can tolerate alcohol or anything like that. And that's just not okay.
I hope they got that guy or girl an Uber home, man. That seems like entrapment there. I don't love that whatsoever. Here's what I really know though. You've got some stories about interviews, I bet, that you're keeping in. That's on the hidden episode that we did previously. So people are gonna have to dig into those archives to find out because I'm sure you've seen some things.
Oh yeah, we've got I've got some stories, but
We got some stories. We'll share those after a drink. I promise to actually have it be bourbon. I won't pretend it's something else. Okay. Um, what about what's your favorite question to ask a prospective hire?
if everything, if compensation is not an issue, location is not an issue, everything fits, and everything that you expect is there, why would you not accept this position? So it's one of these questions that I ask, and usually I'd say 9 times out of the 10, the response that you get back from that candidate is a question or something that hasn't been covered through the process, right? Why would you not accept this position? Everyone seems stumped, and then they're like, well, I mean, I wouldn't accept it if this, right? So that if this is something that hasn't been addressed, hasn't been covered, and it prompts, a conversation at that point. So it's usually something that a question that you want to ask before, an offer is actually presented. So you can make sure that you've addressed every single, gap that exists within that process.
I love that. So what about the famous at the end of the interview? What kind of questions do you have for me? What do you like when people ask you, or is there a question that you can think of that you really enjoyed that somebody asked you? What's a good question for people who are get to the end of the interview process and say, well, what do you want to know about us?
Yeah, I mean, the one question that I love when people ask me is like, why did you say yes, to this organization, right? And at that point, as the interviewer, I am sharing what really made me say yes to the organization, right? And if I'm a candidate, if I'm an interviewee, the response to that, I can understand the authenticity, of that individual. You can also call BS through that question, right? Whether or not that individual is telling you the truth or not. But it's a great question to ask, and I love answering that because it shows the pride of the organization, the function. It shows, it talks about the culture. At least those are the themes that should be coming out to you as an interviewee. And it's something that it's worth. You want to know what's in it for that individual that you're talking to. What was in it for them to say yes to that organization. And it could easily be, hey, they pay me a lot of money, I couldn't say no, and that's okay too. So at least how to position yourself in the offer conversations.
Oh, now I can't wait to ask this question. So, why did you say yes to be the head of human resources at Freddie Flaherty?
So Pretty is a phenomenal organization, one of the biggest law firms here that we have in Maine. And it's at a point where it's going through a transformation. And as we've talked about, I'm the guy that you call, to come help, in a transformation, to the next evolution of the company. And knowing the people in Maine, knowing the people at Preddy, and how fantastic the organization is, the culture of the organization. Everyone in Preddy that I've met has been there 10, 15 years. I could still be the new kid in the block, and I'll still be there 10 years, right? Like it's been great, but it talks to the culture and the loyalty of the company, and really the care that they give, for their employees. But it's, with any law firm, especially, most of these organizations in professional services, there's opportunities to elevate, there's opportunities to evolve and transform. And they called me at the right time where it made sense. And I said, you know what, let me give it a shot. Look, and I'm someone that I have a diverse background in places that I've worked, in organizations that I've worked with, right? I'm industry agnostic. So did I look at it as a challenge? Absolutely. And I still look at it as a challenge. But, sometimes you can't just sit back and say no because you feel like, it's too much of a challenge for you. You have to try it, you have to do it. And so far it's been great. Being there in the last few months has been phenomenal, and the team has been great. Building the team, assessing the culture and implementing new policies, new strategies, and so on, has been great. So definitely excited for that, for the journey right now.
Love that. All right, last hiring question. So, when you miss on somebody, and we all miss every once in a while, is there a common theme of something that you should have done differently, or when you don't make the right hire, like something that you miss that's a commonality, or?
Yeah. So when you miss a candidate, I mean, it's usually we we haven't done a due diligence in the first place in the screening process, to get to that point, right? I think, um, and then nothing hurts more than, missing a candidate because of compensation at the end, right? We shouldn't have gotten to that point, right? If you're missing a candidate, right? Those things should be vetted out early on in the process before they get to the point of, to the offer stage. But a miss is really, when we miss a candidate, I mean, I have I have conversations with the team and trying to understand what was the screening process. How do we get someone all the way to the point that we made an offer for them to say no, right? Like you when you're making an offer, you should all but guarantee that that person is going to accept, right? If you do the screening right, if you've connected, with the right people, and you really truly understand what is going to make them move from the organization today. And so a miss is really, it comes down to what the screening has been and what that process has been, to start with.
Yeah, that's a really good call out. And listen, by the way, you're always recruiting, man. You brought up compensation and paying your people probably 4 or 5 times. I know
This is
there's people
important.
listening to this who are saying, I gotta go work for Gimbala, man. He values me. He knows what I'm
No,
worth.
I mean, it's important, right? Because, right,
Of course it is.
the best advice I've ever gotten was, and with a mentor of mine early on, is take compensation out of the equation, right? Because if you can do that, then everything else becomes easy, right? And regardless of where the market is, people still got to get paid, right? If you think about, where we are today with inflation level, and I'm seeing some posts, you know, you're paying directors 80,000. Look at what are you doing, right? Like, come on, no, let's not do that. Pay people right, and I'm telling you, they will be the best people that you will have, right? Because they know that they're not going to get a better offer in the marketplace. If you don't pay them right, what happens? They show up 90 days later, someone throws an offer in front of them, they're going to take it. They're going to
Yeah,
take it, right? They're
right.
going to take it and run. So remove compensation out of the equation, and your life becomes easier.
I love that. I absolutely love that. All right, listen. People who don't know you, they don't know you're a Renaissance man. You travel all over the world. You're doing things on yourself with a startup and software. You've got your job at Preddy. You're doing all these different things. So I want to know, it could be anything. What's something you're working on right now that you're super juiced about, you're super excited about?
Um, let's see. I mean, so over the last few months, we've been working with, addressing some of the talent gaps, from a consulting perspective, in Ghana. So I was born in Ghana, I grew up in Ghana, before immigrating to the US. And, there's a lot of opportunities to address, the labor market gaps and opportunity gaps in Ghana. And I've been doing that. And it's been incredible to give back to the communities that I grew up in. And I have a family foundation where we pay for scholarships, for kids to go to school in Ghana, full ride. So that's always been inspiring. So over the last, few months, I've spent a lot of time, traveling around Europe and the Middle East, meeting some folks, and networking with some folks. And raising some money for some of the foundation and some of the initiatives that we have, to address labor force inequalities in Ghana. And I think, we're going to be making some headways. We got plenty of news coming up in some of the stuff that we're doing. So I'm sure anyone that's paying attention is going to see that. But, look, it's nonstop. And, I've had the privilege and opportunity to work with some fantastic organizations that have put me in a place where I can be in a position to provide my expertise and experiences to others. And, and to me, that's a blessing and, to be part of.
We're gonna double down on that because I know people are gonna be interested to know Ghana and what's it like to be a professional out there. What is industry like out there? What's the market like out there? How is it different than what we're used to maybe here in the United States?
Well, I mean, so Ghana, obviously a British colony, and I'd say up until the pandemic, is one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, in general. And if you think about just the demographic transitioning in Africa in general, if we can address youth unemployment and underemployment in general, the continent will be, a juggernaut to be reckoned with across the globe just by the sheer number of youth there. But Ghana has been interesting where, 40% of the economy is agricultural. There's a small service in it, so it's 40% agricultural, about 20% that is services based. But you're starting to see this swell of, tech industry is still growing, but there's a lot of media creatives. There's a lot of creative, talent in Ghana. You see a lot of them in YouTube. You see a lot of them in social media and so on. But what Ghana really lacks is the infrastructure and the labor infrastructure to be able to address the gaps that exist. In how you track labor from when an individual, where they're going to school, what they're studying, and how do we create an infrastructure for them to go into a career after they graduate. So those are some of the things that we're creating, to be able to kind of create that infrastructure to say, okay, here's a centralized place where you can find jobs. Here's a centralized place where you can connect employers with, with talent, and then, invest in the development of these individuals and and the youth to go on and create high paying companies or acquire high paying jobs and so on. So there's a lot of work to be done, but I think if anything, if there's one country that can do it, is Ghana, and it's English speaking, and it's only what time zone 4 hours difference, right, from New York, right? So it's in a great position where if you're an employer in the West, and you're thinking about, okay, so what is an English speaking country that I want to, that is not too far out? I don't want to go to India. I don't want to go to the Middle East. Where else can I go? Well, you have Ghana and some of the West African countries that speak English right there.
I love that. All right. How old were you when you left Ghana?
I was just about 13. Just about
Okay.
13.
So outside of family and friends, what do you miss the most about it?
Hey, food, man. The best.
I was gonna say that's what I was hoping you were gonna say. So what is the culinary fare like?
Yeah, let me tell you, people will tell you this Nigerian jollof and all of that. Don't ever listen to them. Ghana has some of the best food. Obviously, the best jollof in Africa is in Ghana, contrary to what.
What's jollof? I have no idea what that is. Tell me.
You
Tell
don't
me
even know what
jollof
jollof is. Oh my God, you need to come over to the house. But it's like my mother-in-law likes to call it, like orange rice, right? It's rice and it's a tomato base, but then you bake it and all of that, and it turns, and it's the best thing in the world. But jollof.
Is it got the crust at the bottom of
Oh
the
my
pot?
God, the crust is the best. Let me tell you a story. I had a roommate here in the U.S. that I made jollof rice, and we ate it, left the crust in the pot, in the kitchen, left, came back. She was trying to wash the dishes. She poured right. I cried to the point that I left. That was the end of our roommate agreement.
Roommates. Is that now a deal breaker? If somebody
It's a
ruins
deal
the
breaker.
jollof,
I mean, I'm
they're
telling you,
out.
the jollof, people will fight over the jollof rice, but I know It's the crust. It's the crust. That is
Well, this
the
is where we're going to synergize because my family, my mom's side is Indian, and we make
right.
biryani, and it's the same thing. When you
I'm
got
telling
that
you,
rice at the bottom of the pot, that's
that's
the best stuff. You
that's the
fight for
best
that.
stuff. Yeah, people will fight, oh, jollof rice. No, 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 no. Get me the crust. That's
All right, here's what's happening. I'm flying to Maine. We're going apple picking. I'm going to see some leaves fall, and then you're going to make me some jollof, right?
I'll make you some jollof rice. Yeah.
I'm totally into it. All right, last question. If you had to give advice to 20-year-old early in career talent, Gimbala Sankare, that you didn't know now, but you know now, I didn't say that right. You didn't know then, but you know now. What advice would you give your younger self, or maybe anybody who's early in their career?
Never stop learning. Right. Never stop learning. And that answer has changed over time. And I think, you know, if I was thinking back at my, 20-something-year-old self, coming out of college, never stop learning. We it's so easy coming out of school to say, well, I want to do this, and then you focus on doing that. But I'll tell you right now, some of the best talent in the marketplace are talent that can do many different things, right? And we're living in an economy where the more things that you can do, the better it is for you, right? Because then you have leverage. So never stop learning, watch YouTube, learn how to make YouTube videos, learn how to be a creator, all of those things. Yes, you can be an accountant, you can be, in strategy, you can be whatever you want to be, you can be a doctor and so on. But guess what? The economy is changing, the market is changing, and you want to have leverage. So never stop learning. So those tools.
Fantastic advice. Gimbala, I really appreciate you coming on for the second time. We're going to have to do a third pretty soon. I really appreciate it, man. Good luck to your Knicks for the upcoming NBA season, unless they're playing the Suns.
Unless they're playing the Suns. I don't know about the Suns, but we'll see. We'll see.
You'll see how it is. You'll find out all about them pretty soon, man. All right, brother?
All right.
I'll
All
talk
right.
to you later.
Take
See
care,
ya.
man. All right.
Thank you for listening to Higher Learning with me, Rashid. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.